Forbes Books presents The Great Digital Transformation with Gerard Zatvani, highlighting the pioneers that reimagined possibilities and reimagined businesses. Today, we are delving into the world of luxury jewelry and the impact of digital transformation. Gerry is over in Ireland with Edith Foley, Director of Digital, and Barbara Wills, Global Head of Product and Experience Design at the Anthony Nicholas Group, the parent company of two globally acclaimed jewelry brands, Fraser Hart and Fields the Jeweler. With over 80 years of experience in the industry, this trusted brand has embraced the changing landscape of retail, omnichannel, and customer service experience through innovative technologies such as AR and VR. Hello, Gerry. Top of the morning to you.
Greetings from Dublin.
Just so you know, Gerry, St. Patrick's Day is not till March. You got there a little early. What brings you to Dublin?
Some good Guinness. I had some really good Guinness last evening with these two ladies, and we've talked a lot of interesting topics, a lot about innovation and customer experience and AR and AI, and very, very interesting.
Yeah, and we are joined by Edith Foley and Barbara Willis from Anthony Nicholas Group. Edith, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, good to see you.
And Barbara, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Really exciting to be here.
All right, Edith, let's start with you. And so we have a bit of context as to what the Anthony Nicholas Group is. So I understand you're a jewelry retailer that's comprised of two different brands, but if you could break down the company and how you became connected with Gerry.
Yeah, so the Anthony Nicholas Group, as you said, we run two different brands. We have the Fields Jewelry brand here in Ireland and also the Fraser Hart Jewelry brand, which is over in the UK. We have about 14 stores here in Ireland and 27 stores in the UK. We operate in the jewelry sector, as well as luxury jewelry. We also sell watches and luxury watches. The main difference between Fields and Fraser Hart would be the products that we range. So we'd have slightly more of the luxury watch brands within the Fraser Hart sector, so the likes of Omega, Tag and Tudor and such. But other than that, our proposition across the two brands are the same in that we feel that our customers and everyone that we work with should feel special, and that's the experience that we try to deliver to our customers.
And Barbara, talk to me about jewelry retail in the e-commerce world. We've discussed e-commerce a bunch on this podcast, but I think you're the first jeweler we've had. So let's get into a little bit of the relationship between jewelers and the internet. Did the industry as a whole, and I know this is kind of anecdotal, did they embrace e-com early on? Talk to me about like that the connection between those two.
I think for the jewellery space, it's maybe been a little bit of slower adoption and kind of moving into the e-commerce world. I think probably what we've seen over the last couple of years as a result of COVID is obviously for a lot of business acceleration, be that either starting to sell online or else looking at maybe what a business roadmap looked like longer term and actually what needed to kind of come forward. So I think what we've seen in that space over the last kind of 24 months has been quite innovative and interesting how we've sort of had to kind of pivot and change and I suppose be that little bit more kind of agile and adaptive to meeting the customer demands in a slightly different way. I mean, jewellery as a category can be quite, in the bridal space especially, and kind of that gifting space it can be quite an emotive purchase. So it was really, and for us now, it's really about how can we create those connected experiences where our store teams have and do it with such conviction and commitment in the brick and mortar of our environment. For us now, it's the challenge of how we can kind of bring that personal touch into an area in the luxury space and in the watch space and the Fraser Hart side, and then also in the kind of the diamond and the bridal space then for Fields then in particular as well. So we're seeing a lot of change. I think pace of change is quite significant, and we're seeing that I think across the sector as a whole is that people now are more willing to kind of embrace that different type of experience online.
We were joking around just earlier that there aren't enough reasons to buy jewelry. I was giving them some tips about how we can make like a renewal of vows every 2-3 years kind of a thing. They can especially bring in my wife into this setup, and we can definitely raise their sales numbers moving forward. But yeah, many very innovative conversations. Especially, I really love the way Edith, you were discussing about looking at data and dashboards and looking into how you can empower a little bit more the stores around the customers. Can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, so I think that the past 2 years has been really making sure that we have the foundations in place from a digital point of view, which is why we went through a whole project to re-platform, and we did that with OSF and moving over to the Salesforce cloud. What we're working on at the moment is a way of bringing that into the data space. So we have a lot of data within the business and across the different channels. We want to really bring that together and have one view of a customer and deliver that data in a way that's really useful for the sales associates in store, for the different teams that might use it. You've got your head office teams, you've got the marketing teams, you've got the buying teams, and making that data accessible, meaningful, and useful, I think would really accelerate what everybody does day to day. And then I think even beyond that, there's more we can do. Once we have the data, it's about how do we use it to predict what's going to happen next? What are our customers going to do next that they don't even know themselves? That we can then go and prompt them to say, you're coming up to 1 year. Did you know here's some milestone anniversary presents that you might like? Those sorts of hints and prompts that we can use, just using the data that we have.
And one of the things Gerry's very passionate about is the post-sale experience. And when I talk to a lot of folks in e-commerce or retail, they talk about this, Gerry's already smiling, the post-sale experience that sometimes it's very transactional. It's like, here's my product, you buy it, bye-bye. But there's more to it than that. So talk to me about that post-sale experience. How important is that for you at Anthony Nicholas right now?
I think it's hugely important. I mean, like you were saying, we don't want to be just transactional, and everything that we sell is more than just a transaction. We're part of somebody's engagement, we're part of somebody's wedding, we're part of their celebrating their promotion. It's more than just a simple, here, take my money, here's a product, off you go. As part of a customer's purchasing journey, they may reach out to us and talk to a number of different salespeople, a number of different times. There's a lot of different touch points that they go through before they buy. And as part of that, they've built up that relationship with us. So post-purchase, it's really important that we keep that going. There's a lot of aftercare that goes on. We'll invite the customer back to have their ring cleaned, every year if they want to. If you bought a watch from us, you've still got your warranty period. You can come in if there's a scratch or you want something fixed. All of those pieces, again, allow us to build up the relationship with the customer. So when they're ready to buy their anniversary present or they're ready to buy their next watch, that we're the first place that they think of. And so that's why it's really important for us to kind of keep the whole relationship beyond just a transaction.
But also enable I think enabling the store associates to have a slightly different role in the sales process, in that the person that you interacted with when you bought something can have a more personal relationship with you, and you would come back to the store because you like that person, not just the brand, not just the store, but you like the interaction. And if that person advised you to purchase a nice ring that your wife really liked or your husband really liked or whatever, then it creates a connection, and that connection keeps on going. And I think enabling these store associates to become more of a cash register operator, like just operating the cash counter, I think that's really the future, where you create an experience, where you create a connection between the store and the customer, something that grows to be way more than just a transaction. It becomes an experience.
And Gerry, I want to ask you this because you've brought it up a couple times, and it's perfect for this conversation, is this idea of working data into the sales experience. And I know a lot of these stores have part-time workers. They have folks who maybe work a couple days a week. They're not 100% invested in the company. They're there to do their job. How do you make it easy for those people that are just working this job that have access to that data? I mean, because you can't just have the data free flowing, but then again, you can't have so many barriers where they can't access the data. How do you make that easier for those people, the front-facing employees of these companies?
Well, sometimes it's also they are telling you what they actually need. And a store associate will say, hey, I've interacted with this and that, and it would have been useful for me to have this information. We discussed about this earlier, about how also some customers, when they reach out to you, they are asking for very specific information. So that gives you some pointers.
I think probably in the context of, the 360 view of customer, it's really fundamentally understanding where those journey touch points are. Understanding, I think, where they may decide to switch channel, and what type of data do our store associates need to fundamentally support that customer then in a brick and mortar environment, or essentially what are we doing then when they've been in and had that store experience. They've maybe had that kind of in-person try-on moment and they're happy to transact online. So how can we create that consistency and really understand that customer? So I mean, fundamentally with that 360 view, then we get the opportunity to know who they are, know how they've interacted maybe at a campaign or in a category level, and then we're surfacing the right type of information to them in the right channel at the right time. You don't necessarily need to maybe have that kind of full-time, kind of long tenure store associate actually kind of hand-holding them through that process. But I think with the right data in the right journey point, the customer should feel like they're having the right experience and essentially complete that journey with the business at a moment in time that actually suits them. And really, I think it is about making sure then that we have that data point that gives us the right context for that moment.
And you mentioned earlier that there are some store associates that really do well, and you are actually watching them on how they perform.
Yeah, I mean, we can see from the data that we have, who's doing well in certain stores and certain categories and such. And so, again, using that data, it's about pulling those learnings across. So if someone's doing really well on bridal, why are they doing well on bridal? What are they doing differently? And how can we share those learnings with other stores or other channels and such?
And Barbara, you've talked about experience a bunch, and I know that's sort of like your specialty. And obviously for folks in the jewelry industry, the experience is the thing. You go in there, you speak to people who know the product in and out. How do you replicate that in an online experience? Because I know for years when e-com first came out, like no one's ever going to buy pants online because they need to try them on. And obviously people now buy pants online. But how do you replicate the experience of walking into that immaculate store and being just blown away by customer service in the world of the internet?
So for us, I think it's, we, as a business, there's a huge amount of time and investment that goes into, empowering our teams with the right level of product knowledge and selling techniques that will allow them to succeed in that physical space. And for us, I think it's really about now thinking about what is effectively the digital twin of that. So it's that assisted selling moment, it's that white glove experience in the e-com world, it's that kind of concierge moment where you may not necessarily connect directly with that store associate that you've had those early explorations with, but essentially we can kind of continue to guide you on that path and through that purchase with the business in the digital space. So it's about, kind of creating those content moments, giving the customers that educational aspect of it, really kind of hand-holding them then through those journey points on site.
The other piece that we've seen, particularly in our sector, is that it's not so much about certain channels doing certain things. From a customer's point of view, it's very omnichannel now. They'll start their journey online, they'll do their research, and then they'll go into store. And that's where it's important to make sure the data's talking to each other. So when they go in store, we already know what you looked at online and we know what you've had in your basket. And I think if we're able to join the dots that way, the overall customer experience is far beyond what they would have gotten if they had just shopped online or just gone into the store.
And by the way, they can try out rings online already. So
we do, yeah. We have that on our on the Fraser Hart website. So if you're looking at a certain ring that you like, you can try the virtual reality, see how it looks on your hand. Same with watches as well. And we are seeing really good engagement rates from customers trying that out, which is good.
Barbara, I want to pick on something you mentioned, talk about the virtual twin. And I interviewed a couple of founders of a Web3 startup called Mintouge, and they're basically a Web3 plugin that allows luxury brands to create digital twins of their purchase. So if you go to Louis Vuitton and you buy a Louis Vuitton bag, you will get a digital version of the Louis Vuitton bag that you can then wear into the metaverse. So I'm just curious, you mentioned the term digital twin. Do you see you guys right now fitting into the metaverse, and the fact that people, when they buy a piece of your jewelry from one of your brands, that then they can have that jewelry in the metaverse?
I told you he's going to bring up metaverse.
For us, it's a very valid use case. I think there is that kind of that distance connection piece that we could probably see as part of that I think that wedding moment in particular, where you may have family that are abroad, you need to find some way, shape or form to maybe connect with them in a different way. Now it's probably a little bit conceptual, but it does, I think, give businesses the opportunity to explore new ways to connect, new ways to engage, new ways for brand awareness. At this point in time, it's very early doors for explorations into the kind of the like-for-like concept of a digital twin. I think probably when we look at it from a business perspective, we think of it as a service twin. So how can we, do that kind of similar customer engagement experience? But I think probably from a product perspective and how we can start to look at that in the metaverse context is something that's on the radar. Early explorations, I think, will probably not be too far away.
Edith, I'm going to give you the tough question because every week we have this really tough question that we ask, and it's very broad, and there's really no right or wrong way to answer this because we've gotten 100 different answers. But how do you define digital transformation?
Yeah, I think it's about doing something differently and adding extra value on top of it, but using digital as a tool to get there. We were talking the other day about the difference between digitization and digital transformation, and there's no point in doing something differently but for the same results, if you're not going to add any value on top. And I think that's really where the transformation layer comes in. Just thinking of an example, say automating our orders going through. That was done manually for a while, just because it made sense at the time. We had a big team of people that were manually pushing the orders through and deciding where they should go. And then when COVID hit, absolutely made sense to digitize that. That wasn't transforming anything. From a customer's point of view, they were still getting the product at the exact same time in the exact same way. It was maybe making things more efficient, but I wouldn't really classify that as transformation. Where digital transformation could come in is, can we do it faster? Can we give them the product a different way? Do we introduce different methods of delivery or and such, and using digital to do that?
A very good idea of digital transformation was what you mentioned earlier when we discussed about using AI for copywriting and SEO. That is like really is both innovative but also transformative. You have both ingredients over there. So you used AI in a very different way to actually transform a process that you were doing or you were imagining done in a different way before. That totally transformed the process, and that's a transformation.
Yeah, which is true. So we've been trying out all the new AI tools that are available at the moment, and we're already seeing really valid business use and business cases for them. So, for example, creating an SEO optimized page, to do it properly for us before would have taken, a few weeks or up to a month, because you've got the keyword research, you've got the copywriting, you've got the editing, you have to build the page on top of that as well. Whereas now using the AI tools, we can do that in the space of a couple of days, and it's very high quality. Everything's correct, and really the overhead is just building the page itself, which is easy enough now for us. So that means that we can now do this type of work at scale very quickly, but with the same team that we had before.
And Barbara, earlier you mentioned omnichannel and 360. So I only post photos of my dog now, but when I go on any kind of social media app, I'm always hit with ads, and you could buy something from the ad directly from the native application. So how does social media and that 360 omnichannel point of view for Anthony Nicholas, have you guys been heavily involved in that as well?
From a social perspective, yeah, and I think, when you think of the application of the AI tools that can be used in the context of both of those, I mean, you think of how you can kind of generate content at scale now and at speed, which, allows us to essentially output more volume, and then, obviously we're going to have a broader reach in that sense. And then when you think of it, I think in the context of how AI operates, currently within the tech stack that we have, and how that can probably layer on and probably create more patterns within, groups and segments that we might already know, or different ways that customers are interacting as well. How that actually then all goes into feed each of the different channel activities that we have, and how we can actually leverage AI in different contexts to get different product in front of customers at different points in time. But that's meaningful for whatever stage they're at, from a kind of a milestone moment to, whatever is relevant to them in terms of any any kind of launch categories, any newness that might be coming through the business as well, and how we can kind of automate that process and make it a little bit more seamless then for our business teams to essentially free up people to think more creatively, I think, and to solutionize in different ways and get less bogged down, I think, in actually kind of the execution element of it, and think of then other areas that can be fully optimized to essentially become more productive.
One good example about social interaction is how you were thinking about having the store associate connect directly with the customer by receiving relevant information and enabling that, because it's also data protection. You have to have the opt-in from the customer, but I think that was a very interesting topic.
And Barbara, I want to talk about some of the experience you have in this world. I mean, I know you've been doing web design since the early 2000s. What kind of changes? I'm sorry for dating you there. You're still quite young. Don't worry about it.
Spring chicken.
Spring chicken. Thank you for the help, Edith. What kind of changes have you seen from? I think your first job was in 2005, 2006. We're dealing now 15, 20 years now. How much has changed in your world in terms of just the ease of pulling off a digital transformation? Because I can't imagine being able to do what you guys are doing now in 2006. So talk to me about the speed in which technology is caught up to your industry and the customers.
Well, I mean, I think the pace of change at this point in time is phenomenal. I think probably more so in the last kind of 3 to 5 years, where we've seen a lot of process transformation for business teams and different work streams that we'd have. I mean, kind of rolling back to, some of the earlier dates, prehistoric dates there that you mentioned, Joe. We're probably looking more around skills mixes that would have dictated, higher kind of a code skills mix, different elements like that, where you're a lot more dependent and a lot more niche on certain types of resources and certain types of people within your business to output and generate content, for a majority of, well, I suppose in some ways a more limited range of channels. Obviously, there's been an explosion in terms of apps and social channels that we've had over the last 15, 20 years as well. But in terms of the technology itself, obviously now we have, in the different technology stacks, you've almost got everything under one umbrella. You look at the likes of kind of Salesforce as a platform and a partner. We've obviously got the in-house AI tools. We've obviously got everything from a content generation perspective, everything that's, I think, probably putting and empowering teams that might be less technical fundamentally. So, again, as I said, they're thinking in different ways. They're thinking to, more trade-based pieces. They're thinking to more kind of, business performance optimization. Obviously, customers at the heart of everything that we do. So what's the end result, and what is that fundamental experience, change for customers? But when you think of it in terms of the toolkits now that we have to do that, you think of the likes of headless CMS and how that kind of transform pieces, and you think about, anything from a CRO perspective and the toolkit that can be layered on top as well to test and try with different customer groups and segments. There's just a multitude now, I think, of ways to kind of optimize business performance in ways that, probably in some ways that were never imaginable in the, kind of 10 plus years ago.
And we were discussing about the speed of ideation, like how fast you can talk about ideas and create new things. It's just something that changed a lot.
Yeah, and I think there's almost an expectation from the customers, but also from a business point of view, that if you have an idea and you want to test it and you want to try it, we want it done yesterday. We don't want to wait for another 3-month roadmap, project map, all that sort of stuff. And there's, I think that pressure coming from both sides is almost forcing this industry to go even faster and faster and faster, and which is great. It allows for this idea of testing, learning, failing, trying again.
And I think this is where AI comes in, is to enable us, to augment us, to enable us to do faster, more interesting things, and approach projects that probably before we wouldn't have approached.
Yeah, definitely kind of looking at them from a slightly different angle as well, where, you come at them with a set of, I think, customer challenges and business challenges that you're solving for, less kind of execution-based motivations, and how we kind of tackle a lot of the pieces now.
And Edith, what you've seen in your experience from sort of connecting the sales piece to the content piece, because now people just don't want to be sold. You have to almost tell a story. You've got to almost create content from your product. Talk to me about the intersect of that, of the idea of making content out of your product that then is able to sell to people without being like, hey, here's a product, buy it.
Yeah, again, given the products that we sell, it's very difficult to expect somebody to buy a 6K watch or a $6,000 engagement ring based off a couple of lines of text and one image. You know, that nobody will do that. They want to see the product. If they can't get into store, they want to see it from all angles. They want to see how it looks on a hand. They want more than just 2 lines of text about it. They want to know what sort of gemstone is in the ring, what metal is in the ring, how do I take care of it? They're the sorts of content that a customer will expect to see on a PDP. And even beyond the PDP, you know, that we know that our customer will start their research most likely from social media, and that's where they get the inspiration. So we need to be selling and creating our content at that point before they even make it onto the website. But again, having that content joined up, so what they're seeing on social is the same thing they're going to see on the website, and the same thing they'll see in a reminder email down the line, just reinforcing the same points again.
And you mentioned earlier, Edith, AR and VR, big part of selling. Like you just mentioned, the fact that you could see it on your hand and such. Where else can you go with that technology? Are we seeing limitations in terms of like, okay, we can just show the watch on someone's hand or a ring on a finger? Is there anything else that could be explored with that kind of tech?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the biggest limitation for us at the moment is, you know, it's easy to do it for a ring, it's easy to do it for a watch. A little bit difficult to do it on a necklace or earrings and such, because you need dimensions, you need a few other pieces in. So, you know, I'm sure it'll get to the point where you don't need those pieces anymore. But I think beyond just a static image of how the ring looks on your hand, you know, the customer will want to see, how does it look if I move? How does it look in different lights? And I want to share it with somebody. You know, I want to share it with my friend to get their opinion before I click to buy. Yeah, I think there's still more to go.
Probably the biggest challenge with the technology and innovation in general is to actually make people adopt it. And how do you drive this innovation? How do you drive this idea? How do you work with ambassadors? How do you work with super users that will actually pioneer these things? Like, I think this is a challenge that you are having and you are working on, and it's probably in all the organizations. Like, from my experience, everybody that I've been talking to, I think adoption and change management are probably very, very difficult tasks.
Yeah, and I think that's with every new piece that comes online, every new project that you're releasing. It's really important to make sure that the stakeholders are involved all the way through, you know, from discovery through testing, through releasing and pinpointing, like you're saying, those champions that will really embrace it, and make sure that whatever you're releasing is not just released and left, but actually released and really used and the value maximized out of it. And that's the same from if you're introducing a really big project or just a slightly different way of working. Like, you know, we're going to take appointments virtually now as opposed to a customer calling or walking in.
And we started this conversation talking about the fact that the jewelry industry was a little slow to adapt to e-com, and we've seen the strides they made in it. But Barbara, the idea of making a big purchase online for a lot of people is still difficult. Is that still a hurdle that you guys need to deal with? Like, oh my God, do I have to worry about porch pirates? I mean, are we gotten to the point where people like, they don't mind clicking buy, send, and dealio, or is that friction pretty much gone now?
I think there's, you know, at times, depending on the customer, depending on I suppose the level of investment, there can still be a little bit of friction. But I think it's about having that kind of joined up experience where they either have the right amount of information online, the right type of selling experience and buying experience online that kind of alleviates that pressure point. Or else they have access to somebody, you know, from either a virtual setting or at the end of a phone who can support them in that journey if they're not within a kind of the reach of a store as well. But I think we also have customers who, you know, you look at the watch space in particular, and they, you know, they're collector's items. They're people who are very engaged in terms of, you know, having access to a brand that they love at the same time as the collection within that brand, and how we actually then connect with them in different and meaningful ways for them to know that they have access to, you know, a latest release or a limited edition through, you know, the store contact that we have, through that virtual selling channel, through that kind of outreach piece, you know, via SMS or via your email piece, and then, you know, transacting online. So I think that once we've actually kind of established then that relationship with a customer, that friction, I think, we become a trusted partner for them, and that friction essentially, goes away.
And you mentioned the watch space, but I came to discover that there's like this big underground subculture of watch fans who like buy like these vintage watches online, and there's like YouTube shows. It's crazy. So, and my question to you, Edith, is you're tech people. You guys know tech. You know how to sell online. How much of a sort of a learning curve was it for you to become a quote unquote an expert in jewelry and knowing the ins and outs of it? Because the two brands you work with deal in all different things. You've got watches, you've got earrings, rings. There's a lot to know. How much of that did you have to pick up on and become an expert, or at least be know enough to be dangerous to be able to work in the field that you're in now?
I suppose I had a little bit of an advantage in that I absolutely love jewellery, and that was the reason why I wanted to work in this space. So that was definitely a help. But there was a big learning curve, really getting to know the products and getting to know the watches and the different collections and such. So I think, again, that's where having a really good team in place helps. So we work very cross collaboratively with the buying departments, and we talk to store and retail and such. We'll do the training as well if there's training available for certain watches. But the other piece which is really useful is data. So just really digging into not only the sales but the user behaviour. What's popular, what are people searching for, why are they searching for it, what keywords are they searching for. All of those pieces will help us form a better idea of what's selling and why, and then we can pull that all together and then resurface that back out. Have a popular searches or popular this week sort of piece. And to do that, you don't really need to know the product inside out. It helps, but you can do that. You can apply that same learning to any industry.
And you mentioned I asked you the digital transformation question earlier, and you did a great job with that, gold star. But I'm curious, is it easier now to sell the idea of digital transformation to senior leaders than it was, say, 5-10 years ago? Are you able to be like, okay, cool, we need to do this, and then senior leaders like, okay, we understand. You've given us the PowerPoint presentation. You've given us the data. Is digital transformation an easy sell today?
It is, yeah. I think as long as it's less about just digital transformation for the sake of it, it all has to be brought back to the customer. We want to change this process, or we want to introduce this project or this new system because it's going to help our customer in this way, or because this is what the customer wants. And I think as long as it all comes down to that, then it is a much easier sell than it was before. And the senior leaders they're very on top of these sorts of pieces. They'll be looking at what other people are doing or what's out there, and picking up on all these new innovations and coming back with why don't we do this, or what about this? And again, that's where the other pressure is coming from. That's a great idea. How do we do it faster, or how can we test it and see if it works or not?
Like the way you have AD and BC in calendar years and everything. I think you have in digital transformation, you have BP and AP, BP being before the pandemic and AP being after the pandemic. It's that really marks the eras, like what you had, and a certain understanding and about the need of having digital transformation, need of having digital in really supporting your business and transforming your business. And then after the pandemic, where everything like really shifted, and you don't really need to explain why and how. And today, I think it's way more about really bringing it into your field, really making a use case for your particular business, instead of talking in general why you would need to do this.
Yeah, I think it's definitely in the context of what feels right for our business at that right moment in time. In some cases we may not be reinventing the wheel, but it's actually going to be so massively transformational and more productive to operate in a slightly different way, that we will actually then succeed and be freed up to succeed in new ways as well.
And Gerry knows how much I love to talk about the pandemic, but let me ask, how did you see sales, without giving company secrets, but did you see more people more likely to buy jewelry, BP or I forgot what you were using there, your acronyms there. But after the pandemic, Barbara, were you able to see more people likely to buy a piece of jewelry than they were pre-pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. I think people have more widely adopted. I think checking out in that digital and in that virtual way. I think that there has been kind of a craving for that human connection in some ways as well, which I think people are enjoying that kind of brick and mortar moment as well. But definitely, I think that people have embraced it in new ways. But then again, like Edith was saying, expectations change, so you need to be there in the forefront of pacing and meeting those expectations in new and novel ways.
Some topics before the pandemic were considered innovation and now are considered bread and butter.
Yeah. Just having, a very fast website with a checkout that works, that's an absolute just foundation. You have to have that. But surprisingly, before the pandemic, there were a lot of websites that didn't have that. That would have just been browsing only, or the bare minimum. Whereas now it's just a pure expectation. You have to have that.
It's amazing what are the expectations now after the pandemic. The industries have shifted and have transformed at a quite fast pace.
Well, Edith, thank you very much for the time. Again, great job on the digital transformation question. Barbara, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you hanging out with us here in Dublin. Thank you so much, and good luck to the Anthony Nicholas Group. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This has been The Great Digital Transformation with Gerard Zatvani. To participate in the conversation, go to gerardzatvani.com. The Great Digital Transformation is a production of Forbes Books.